All right, today we are diving into a big one, Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. Now, this book is, let's just say, dense. It is not a beach read, for sure, but its goal is something truly profound, to guide a seeker on a path toward what Pike calls intellectual and moral light. So, let's get started on that journey.
So Pike kicks things off with this quote, and you can see right away he's not starting with easy answers. Instead, he's laying down a fundamental truth. This tells you from the get-go that Morals and Dogma isn't some simple instruction manual. No, it's an invitation to explore the great questions of our existence, acknowledging that our lives are basically wrapped in an enigma. It really sets the perfect tone for a philosophical quest, doesn't it?
Okay, to help us navigate this really complex work, we're going to follow a pretty clear path, broken down into 5 essential steps. We'll start with the whole purpose of the Masonic journey, the search for light. Then we'll explore its unique language, the language of symbols. After that, we'll see how all that knowledge gets put into action in the Mason's great work. Then we'll zoom out to contemplate the ultimate object of the quest. And finally, we'll unlock what Pike calls the royal secret. So, what is this journey really all about? At its absolute core, Pike presents Masonry as a perpetual struggle. A struggle out of the darkness of ignorance and vice, and a constant striving toward intellectual and moral light. You could say it's a process of elevation. You know, Pike's definition here is fascinating because he just bypasses all the mystique. He's saying it's not about secret handshakes or rituals just for their own sake. He frames it as a philosophical system, kind of like a school that's dedicated to teaching universal truths, using reason, wisdom, and a profound love for humanity. So if Masonry is a teacher, what language does it speak? Well, according to Pike, it's not the language of plain words. Instead, truth is communicated through this rich and ancient vocabulary of symbols. And these symbols, they act like veils, hiding the truth from the careless observer, but revealing it to the dedicated seeker. And this is so important to grasp. These aren't just pretty decorations. Symbols are the very tools of Masonic thought. They're designed to point toward these profound ideas that are often just too vast or too complex to be captured by a simple definition. They require real contemplation, not just memorization. This is a perfect example of a symbol in action. The ancients didn't just worship the sun because it gave them warmth or light. According to Pike, they saw its unwavering, predictable daily journey as a reflection of a much deeper principle, the changeless, steadfast, and eternal nature of the divine itself. The physical object points directly to a metaphysical idea. Or, let's take another universal symbol, the cross. Pike reminds us that its symbolism is far, far older than any single religion. In ancient Egypt, you had the crux ansata, which represented life itself. For other traditions, it symbolized the union of the active and passive forces of nature, the forces that create the world. And, of course, it also represents the ultimate virtue of devotedness and self-sacrifice. And finally, we have the perfect cube. This symbol kind of brings all those lofty ideas back down to earth. With its equal sides and its stable form, it's a natural symbol for perfection and truth. But more than that, for Pike, it symbolizes earthly justice, the balanced, stable force of a community that's expressed as a just and equitable law. Okay, understanding symbols and truths is one thing, but Pike is absolutely adamant that knowledge is useless unless it is applied. And this brings us to the Masons' great work. Now, this isn't just about building temples of stone. It's about building a better self and a better world through constant, meaningful labor. This quote right here cuts straight to the heart of Pike's philosophy. A belief system, it doesn't matter how beautiful or true it is lifeless if it doesn't translate into action. True faith, true understanding, has to be demonstrated through tangible works, through actual effort and labor out in the world. And this is where Pike gets really specific about what work actually means. He draws this sharp line between sentiments and principles. Sentiments? Those are just fleeting feelings. You know, we might feel angry about an injustice for a moment and then totally forget about it. Principles, on the other hand, are permanent rules of action that we consciously choose to live by. And Masonry, he says, insists on principles because deeds are always greater than words. So, from earthly work, our path now turns upward to contemplate the ultimate object of this entire quest. And we're not talking about a specific religious dogma here, but about understanding the Masonic conception of the divine, this universal, kind of indescribable first cause that underlies all of existence. To get there, Pike asks us to look back in time. He shows that this search for the divine is a universal human impulse. And while the names and the stories changed from culture to culture, they were often expressing a very, very similar core idea about the nature of reality. And you can see that pattern right here. Whether you're looking at Egypt, Persia, or ancient Greece, Pikes shows this recurring tendency to understand the divine not as a single, simple thing, but as a trinity of principles, creator, sustainer, destroyer, or maybe will, light, and life. This pattern, he suggests, points to a shared human intuition about the fundamental structure of the cosmos. So what this all leads to is Pike's core belief: God is the intelligence of the universe itself. And because of that, the highest form of worship isn't found in some elaborate ceremony or rigid doctrine. Nope. The most acceptable worship is a life lived with virtue, compassion, and active benefit to other people. Your life itself becomes the prayer. And that brings us to the final step of our journey, the climax, where all the previous lessons, the symbols, the labor, and the contemplation of the divine all converge into one profound revelation: the royal secret. So, after this entire journey through symbols and labor and philosophy, what is the ultimate truth that Masonry is trying to impart? What is this secret that lies at the very center of the temple? Well, here it is. The royal secret isn't some external piece of information. It's an internal realization. It's the understanding that we all contain both the human, our passions, our ego, our flaws, and the divine, our reason, our conscience, our capacity for virtue. The great work, the ultimate purpose, is to bring these two forces into balance, to let the divine within you guide and master the human. And by doing this in ourselves, we help to make the entire world a temple, a place fit for that divine intelligence. And so, Pike leaves us with a final, challenging question. This great work of balancing the human and divine, of building a better world, is never truly finished. It's a continuous process, a constant labor. So the question he poses to every reader and to each of us is this: are you going to be a spectator, or are you going to be a builder?